Hi there, I'm Kevin Burke. I'm one half of the writing, producing team and show running team of Transformers BotBots.
And I'm Doc Wyatt. I'm the other half of Burke and Wyatt, and we're excited to talk about Transformers BotBots today, now on Netflix.
So you guys talk about what this show is all about. Give us your little elevator pitch for people who haven't heard of this show concept before.
Well, real quick, the concept is there's a mall, and a cloud of Energon came down on the mall, and it brought to life various products within the mall. So we're getting back to, in some ways, the original exciting idea of Transformers, which is that anything can be a robot in disguise. And so if next time you're going shopping, look around. There might be coffee cups, there might be computers, there might be a donut that are secretly robots that are hiding during the day, and then at night they have the run of the mall and they live as wildly as possible.
That sounds fun. Now, where does this take place within the Transformer extended universe?
They don't know where they fit into the Transformers extended universe, and they also do not care where they fit into the extended Transformers universe. It's completely separate. They don't know that they don't know about Autobots or Decepticons. They just came to life in a mall and they want to have a good time. In
fact, they don't know that there's life outside of the mall. They're somewhat frightened of it. They find it very mysterious. There's legends about it. It's designed for, if you've never heard of Transformers, this is a great show for you to hop in. You don't need to know anything about it. But if you've also loved Transformers for, 30 years, you can just totally hop into this show. You'll find some Easter eggs there for you. It's a really good point of entry for new viewers, but also for parents to watch with their kids.
I have to imagine that's probably pretty cool for you guys as creators as well, right? Like the Transformers universe is so deep with lore and stuff. So to have your own kind of playground that you can do new stuff, try new ideas, have your own characters, I imagine that's pretty sweet.
Well, it is a lot of fun. I mean, we are big Transformers fans, and we've done shows that are pretty steeped in lore. We've written on Cyberverse, and we've written on some of the shows that were part of the Transformers Aligned continuity, if you're a Transformers fan. But yeah, it was also fun to kind of be able to approach a whole new it's the first ever Transformers comedy. And we get to be wacky with it. We get to be silly with it. It's geared for kids, but we also wanted it to be a co-viewing experience so parents could sort of sit down and watch it, as a group or as a family. And so, yes, a lot of fun to be free like that. But, the lore's good too.
Absolutely. And we look at this in the realm of a Pixar sort of DreamWorks thing, where it's not a preschool show, it's not an adult show, it's for the whole family. So there's comedy and there's heart for everybody, that can watch this.
And that's always the challenge when you're making a spin-off show, because you always have the older demographic be like, well, I don't like this. Well, like maybe it's not meant for, 18 to 25, maybe it's meant for, like you said, everybody and not just one specific demographic. And that can be really difficult when you're doing a show with such a beloved history and characters and you're taking a new spin on it. Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yes, in fact, that's one of the things that was important to us. We did not want to approach this show like some other shows have done and take existing characters that everyone knows and loves, like Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Megatron, and turn them into sort of cutesy versions of them, right? This is its own original world within the Transformers universe that doesn't negate anything. It's, if you love it, fantastic. It doesn't have to fit into a timeline. It doesn't take characters that you've loved for decades and turn them into comedy characters. They're not the butts of jokes. This is its own, utilizing the idea of Transformers, of robots in disguise, putting it in its own sort of side universe that you can love on its own, but does not actually negate anything, does not twist anything you might have loved for decades. That was important to us because we've done a lot of shows, that have had decades worth of fan bases, and it's a fine line to walk. We wanted to be able to approach both, groups and find something that they might totally enjoy.
So I know you guys have like a rich history working in television. I know you've done a lot of adult animation as well as like stuff geared towards all ages. Could you speak to the specific lessons that you learned working on those different genres within that animated framework?
Well, I think that animation, the first, I think, message of that is that animation is such a wide canvas to be able to tell stories with, and I feel like we sometimes in America put animation in too tight of a box. That Disney was such a so important, such an important voice in the American animation industry and globally too. But it also sort of gave the audience perception that everything was for kids and kids of a certain age. And what's been really blossoming in the last several years are American animated series that are for different groups of people. That we got to work on the Critical Role series, which was very much for an older audience. But there's also been sort of tween shows and just different demos. It's such a wide canvas. You can tell so many stories. Animation just doesn't have to be limited, and that's sort of what we love about it.
And we're sometimes finding, you have to just make sure you know your audience when you're going into this show. Transformers has been around for a long time, so there are definitely older fans who take it very seriously, and that's very important to them. But it's also important to us that new generations don't get turned off by the amount of, how long it's been there, that they don't feel like it's not something for them, So when you're making a show like this, or even a preschool show, you have to keep in mind, like, this is to get the young people who are eventually going to turn into the 30 and 40-year-old fans someday, but if we can't get them excited about the mere concept about it at a certain age, they're going to miss out. I was 8 when I got into Transformers, that was an important age for me to do that. And we're trying to find the 8-year-olds today who would love this. It
is a difficult age range because people forget that cartoons for a long time were meant for kids. And it wasn't until like certain shows get released, Batman animated series one, like takes it more seriously or darker for an older audience. And then that's all people wanted for a long time. And then I feel like these shows like these kind of got shafted or overlooked or not paid attention to just because they were a more broader user base and weren't as adult oriented. Like like Vox Machina is a great show, but like there's no way in hell a kid under the age of 12 is going to be allowed to watch that. You know what I mean? So they got to have something to watch. And if you're smart writers and good producers, then it's someone that the adults can watch with them without having to roll their eyes or be on their phone or plug their ears. Like so many of the younger cartoons tend to be very loud and obnoxious and screaming consistently. But if you can do it, if you can get those right elements, you can have a huge hit on your hand that everyone can enjoy.
Sorry, go ahead, Kev.
Okay, no, I think that's absolutely right. And I do think we look at different TV shows, but also features, family entertainment that the whole family can enjoy is more popular than it's ever been. As a parent, I'm very glad we have kids at this time because there are a lot of films that we can watch and all thoroughly enjoy. And that was not the case even in my childhood. But I do say, I spent my childhood trying to convince people that superheroes can be taken seriously for adults. And now I spent a big chunk of my adulthood reminding people that superheroes can also be for kids, and that, these toy shows can also be for kids as well as adults.
And the streaming environment has just made the diversification of the industry so much more pronounced, because streaming as opposed to broadcast or even as opposed to cable, like, can be so much more niche and can target specific audiences. So it's only sort of helped make more products for more kinds of people.
I'm glad you brought up streaming, because I wanted to ask about like making a show for Netflix and working on streaming versus cable. Do you feel like there's less restraints working on streaming? Are there like parts of the show or ideas where it's like, we can do that because we're on Netflix, but we probably would have had a harder sell if that was on cable? Or is it really more the same for you?
No, it's different. I mean, I think there are less restrictions, and also there's when we've worked in broadcast, there's a lot of emphasis on being able to make a show that anyone who tunes in at any time and happens to catch it will understand everything that's happening. And when you're working with streaming, there's a lot of emphasis on, they can always watch from episode 1, so they're never going to be confused about what's happening, but an emphasis on sort of serializing it and sort of making payoffs for people who watch the entire run or who binge the whole show. And so, yeah, there's a little bit, the rhythm of the storytelling is affected by the distribution.
And we get to at least send, in streaming, we can sort of send it all out at once, meaning some of these story points we have, even in BotBots, are long-term story plans. And if it dropped once a week, it would take you weeks for you to get to some of the twists and some of the turns, and you wouldn't get a full concept of the show. With streaming, it's all sort of there for you. It's like getting a big novel, and however long it takes you to read that, you're going to experience the entire thing. You're going to see what our plan is from the very start.
That's interesting. That's an interesting idea as well with just the overall production of it on a streaming service. When I was working in animation, by the time the first episode was just about to air, they were wrapping the final episode, getting it sent to the timers and the storyboard outs, doing the color, doing all that stuff. And like Wyatt said before, you guys gotta give them all. You gotta give episodes 1 through 10 all at once. It's not like you can give you 1 and then 2, then we can look at it, give some feedback. Like, talk about that process. Like, did you have to give the whole season? Do you give the whole season out at once, or do you get feedback on each episode and give the critiques and move on from there?
This is the second show we've done for Hasbro and Netflix. We did Stretch Armstrong before, which was 2 different drops. But you have your internal notes. You know what's working. Everybody's starting. As you would know in animation, you start a show, everyone starts to get up to speed, figuring out, voice actors start to figure out the character, the board artists start to figure out the rhythm. Even as writers, we, start to figure out what's working and not working. So you have internal feedback. You definitely know, what's playing and not playing based on your own set of criteria in the executive. But when you're doing something that broadcast, you can actually make some changes based on the fan reaction. You can see which characters seem to be getting a more reaction, and you can say, okay, well, now we're moving on. Like, we're going to start featuring this character more, or we're going to feature this character less based on reaction. You can kind of get a little more of the fan base response to it, which is different when you're dropping 10 episodes in one time.
On sort of a behind the scenes level, Netflix may drop everything on one date, but we don't deliver completed episodes to Netflix all at once necessarily. We do it in sort of batches. So even though they're doing an assembled drop, we're not necessarily delivering, because they have, especially Netflix is in so many countries, they have so much localization that they need to do, that if they can be sort of starting to localize the early episodes of the season while we're still delivering the final episodes of the season, then they get a jump on it, and then their release date is sooner rather than later.
Yeah, the production schedule is very similar to what it is when you're doing it on cable and on broadcast. It's just that nothing drops until they're all done.
No, my other question, which is a really important one, how do you guys determine? Because back in my day when I worked in animation, you guys have been working it longer than I have, but how does a producer or a showrunner or the client view a series as success? Because it used to be based on toy sales, but I know that's kind of gone out the window recently. Like, how do they determine if BotBots is like a success? Is it by numbers? Is it by how many toys they sell? Like, can you talk about that process?
It is by the joy that is granted to the hearts of children.
That is right. There's a measurement. There's a device, that can measure that. No, the truth is, to your point, the nature of the business has changed. It's especially changed in the last 5 years, and thereby the metrics that gets a show renewed or measures whether or not it's success is different. 10 years ago, if your show had good ratings and you're selling good toys, then, that was pretty clear. Why would we not order more episodes? Sometimes there's creative reasons not to now. Sometimes there obviously could be toy version reasons not to as well. There are a number more factors. It's not quite the same simple, if we hit X rating, like this sort of thing, then that means that we're gonna, or sell this many toys, that means that it's a success. The barometer is totally different. And in animation, we found certain shows, very successful about what Doc was saying with niche audiences. There's some people who will obsess over a show and keep that show going because they're a very loyal fan base. Sometimes it hits a little broader, and sometimes great shows don't get picked up again. And those factors, oftentimes fans try to guess what that must be. Is it toy sales? Is it this? Sometimes it's other things. It's availability of writers, or producers. It's availability of the production company. There are a number of factors that go into, how long a show lasts or how successful a show is. And so we feel very excited just to have a show come out. It's not easy to make television, and having a show come out is such a thrill in and of itself. And with Netflix, it's on, you can watch it forever in that sense. It's not like it dropped and then if you didn't catch it or TiVo it, you're not going to see it. We live in a world where people can keep discovering this for years.
Yeah, syndication is it's a thing, but now it's more of a streaming service. Where back then, people would order, was it 100 episodes of G.I. Joe just to run in syndication purposely? Right. That was how the industry worked. It's changed so it's so different now, like you guys have said.
Yeah, and the other thing is that sort of it would have been about your ratings versus your competition in the time slot. And of course, streaming makes time slots a thing of the past. Like there's no sense of how we're doing against a competitor in the same space, in the same hour, So streaming services now have their own sort of internal metrics that have more to do with subscriber retention and things like that than time slots or anything we're used to in the Nielsen space.
And all that stuff is sort of out of our realm. Like naturally, we hope any show we do, especially BotBots, is very successful. But we just have to make the best show we can make in the show we want to watch, and hope that everyone else feels the same way.
I'm curious. So we were talking in the beginning about how a lot of the Transformers that we see in BotBots are a little bit more outside the box than like the cars and jets and helicopters. Do you guys have any personal favorites of the group that you got?
My favorite BotBot by far is Frostferatu. He is a cupcake who is also a robot, who is also a vampire, who is also a hypnotist, but he is a very bad hypnotist, and who thinks he's a good one, but he is not. And he's a lot of fun to write for and to see on screen.
My favorite is one of the main Lost bots. His name is Clogstopper. He is a plunger, so he spends a lot of time in toilets and doing odd things. And he's the odd one. Like, he's the one who will say the strangest things, the things that make you do a double take where you're like, wait a minute, what could that have possibly meant? But he also sees things, really outside of the box. So writing him was a pleasure. Anytime he showed up into a scene, I knew the scene was about to become great because he just really brought something to every moment. And he's definitely my favorite character to write.
And Hasbro, by the way, is releasing a new series of the toy, to coincide with the show coming out on Netflix, Series 6. There you can pre-order them now. They're a lot of fun. They've got a bunch of characters that are directly from the show in the series.
Yeah, 75 new bots coming out tied to the series.
You guys also talk about like your process and your inspirations for writing the show. I mean, obviously, Transformers inspiration, but I also get maybe a little bit of the Brave Little Toaster in there a little bit. Do you guys watch any research for that kind of stuff?
There's definitely some Toy Story, Night at the Museum, Brave Little Toaster, but honestly, there's also a lot of sitcom. There's a lot of The Office in there. There's a lot of Seinfeld in there. We definitely went into it saying to ourselves, like, let's not think of this like an animated, young kid show. Let's think of this like a sitcom. You know what I mean? Let's have some awkward moments. Let's not just fill it with wall-to-wall music. It's definitely a slightly different style than you would see in a lot of these types of shows.
We also drew inspiration from, because they come to life in these sort of squads based on what store they were sold in the mall, and they're kind of cliquey. And so we drew a lot of inspiration from 80s high school movies, like the movies we sort of grew up with where people were in cliques, and there's a few things, by the way, that happened to us in real life that we wound up putting into like a BotBot format.
Yes, but we won't tell you which things those are. That's up to you.
Because they're embarrassing. Better that the animated robots be embarrassed than us.
Yes.
Fair. We see in the trailer, there's a human character that kind of looks like they serve as like an antagonistic force. They're like trying to catch the BotBots and prove their existence. I imagine there's probably just a handful of humans that show up in the show. Is it just them, or?
Well, mostly it is just him. That is Dave. He's the mall guard, also known as the flesh being, because they don't know how to describe him exactly. And he is the only one at the mall at night trying to keep the place safe. He's not very good at his job, but he is their threat to their existence because he's determined to prove that they are there. And if everyone finds out they're there, then the whole idea is just ruined, that they can hide here and just sort of have a run of the place at night. So he's the biggest threat, because during the day they're all hiding on the shelves, pretending that they're the products that they actually are, and trying not to get bought because they don't know what's outside of the mall, and they'd be terrified to get scanned out, as they call it, and shipped off to some unknown place where they never return. So Dave is the number one antagonist in their group.
You guys talk about as far as producing and writing for animated films, with technology ever evolving in streaming services, has that made your job easier, harder? Because I remember having to ship out just boxes and boxes of storyboards that will this thick out, to the timers or the colorist or whatever. And I'm having a hard time imagining doing that at home without a big copy machine with a bunch of the paper that they use.
Yeah, everything's digital now. Yeah, when we had to do the transition to home, honestly, we didn't miss too much. The studio was able to sort of carry on their work almost without missing a beat, because everything's about shuttling shared, files across.
And the production side, has to make some adapting, to things in the COVID era, but also with streaming, things have definitely changed on their side, and everybody's trying to find a way that works for everybody. On the writing side, for what we have to deal with, it's still pretty much the same. We write scripts, we we have writers' rooms, whether they're virtual or in person, and then we ship scripts off. So our end of it has not changed that much, but the schedules and everything like that, it has definitely affected the production aspect of it on that end.
Yes, I know the season isn't out just yet. It's coming out in like a couple of days here. Obviously I don't know,
25th.
like 25th, gotcha. I'm obviously I don't know where it ends, like story-wise, but as writers, do you already have like ideas kind of percolating in your head, like where the story could go next? Do you already have like, if we do another round of episodes, like we've got to go here and do this kind of thing? Or
Absolutely. That's just the nature of telling stories. The more stories you tell in a world, the more stories you come up with. And we have seasons and seasons of ideas of where we can go with the BotBots.
When does the show come out? Where can people watch it, and where can people find more information about it?
It comes out right now, March 25th on Netflix. And absolutely, it's fun for the whole family. Check it out.